Okay, so I'm going to be explaining the rhetorical précis and how to use this rhetorical précis as a way of structuring thoughts for a short essay. So first of all, this rhetorical précis is a 4-sentence structured paragraph. The idea of this structure was originally devised by monks in the Middle Ages for teaching poetry and Bible verse summaries to rich kids. So obviously, it's a very versatile form that can be switched and modified in a lot of different ways. The basic structure of the rhetorical précis is designed to help students understand the things that they're reading and writing about as arguments instead of as text that they need to summarize for themselves. The idea of thinking about a text as an argument is thinking about how a text applies to the real world, that a real author created the text for a real audience in order to have a real impact on the world. All speech acts, written, visual, even the way that we dress and present ourselves to others, is part of a social argument. An argument about the kind of people we are, an argument about our values, an argument about how we think things are or should be. The idea of this rhetorical précis is to be able to summarize texts briefly, very, very quickly, to be able to get to the point right away. Students are always asking me this question. Should I do a lot of summary at the beginning of my essay to tell the reader of my essay about the story? Should I assume that they've never read the story before? Or should I assume that they have read the story before and not give very much summary? The answer is, you should assume that I have never read the story from your point of view, with your eyes, with your life experiences, and your understanding of the author's work. The idea about how to use this précis is a way of getting to the point, not telling me about the story, but telling me about what you think is interesting, about what the author is doing with the story. In the first sentence of the rhetorical précis, there are a couple of structures that you need to include in a complete sentence. The author, the title, the date, which is usually just going to be the year of publication, in parentheses. The genre, what kind of a text is this? Is it a short story? Is it a novel? Is it a TV show? Is it a YouTube clip? The kind of text that it is, the genre, matters because it tells your reader how to feel or think about that text. I do not feel the same way about a tweet as I do about a peer-reviewed journal article. That doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate reasons to use both in an essay, but I need to know what it is, or else I don't know how to use it. Finally, the most important piece that you're including in your first sentence of the rhetorical précis is the major claim. Another way of thinking about this is it is the author's thesis. What do you think is the main statement that this author is trying to make? You're going to create that statement in the form of a verb plus that clause. Verb plus that is going to be something like claims that, argues that, demonstrates that, illustrates that. Basically, the author is showing that something is true. The author is claiming that something is true. The author is illustrating that something is true. If you want to think about other verbs that you can use, just go ahead and Google rhetorical verbs, and you will get thousands of lists of thousands of verbs. In fact, verbs that are rhetorical verbs, verbs about talking, are the most common kind of word in the English language. There are more words in the English language that basically mean says than any other word. So, we are really concerned about language, and there are lots of different ways of putting this first sentence. The second sentence is, in a complete sentence, tell me what kinds of data, evidence, or support the author is using to back up this major claim. So how is this major claim supported by evidence? In the case of a story, like the short story that many of you are going to be writing about for your first assignment, The story is the evidence. The story was completely invented, made up by the author as a way of expressing this major claim. So the evidence in a fictional text is the story the author made up to support that. Other authors use other kinds of evidence. Scientists tend to focus on statistical evidence and data. Sociologists might use previous experiments as the basis for new ideas. Philosophers might refer back to ancient texts. Lawyers might look for precedents of other cases that were similar. Different kinds of claims require different types of evidence to back them up. But you can't make a claim without some kind of support. How does the author provide that? The next item that you're going to need to include in the rhetorical précis is a complete sentence that explains the real-world purpose about why you feel the author made this point. What is the impact on the real world that this author wanted to have? This word exigency is a word that many of you probably aren't familiar with, but that you know already because you speak Greek. Because everybody speaks Greek, you just don't know it yet. Exi is a prefix which means outside. An exit is the way out. An exoskeleton is an animal that wears its skeleton on the outside of its body instead of the inside. Exi. Gen is a chunk of language that means beginnings. Exigency is the outside beginning. The reason that this text was made to apply to the real world. Finally, how does the author make a connection with their audience? This structure, how does the author make a connection with the audience? What is the real world purpose that the author is trying to serve with this text? How does the author include data, evidence, and support in that text? And what is the major claim that the author is trying to make? These questions are the ones that are answered with a rhetorical précis. For this assignment, what you're going to be doing is writing a rhetorical précis about the text that you're going to be using as your main text for your essay. Once you've written this paragraph, you're then going to, underneath each one of these sentences, as part of an outline, include specific examples that back up or support what you say in each one of these sentences with evidence from the text. This paragraph structure can be very easily modified in a number of different ways. One of the most useful ways that my students in the past have used this structure is as an outline to short essays. With each one of these sentences, you are making a statement about a text. You are telling your readers something about this text as an argument. However, you didn't come up with those ideas all on your own. You got those ideas by reading and studying and discussing and talking about the text. So for your homework assignment, what you're going to be doing is taking each one of these sentences and then finding specific examples from the text about where you found those ideas. As an example, I asked you to watch episode 13 of Carl Sagan's mini-series Cosmos over the last couple of days. I'm going to use that as an example here. In episode 13 of the mini-series Cosmos, 1980, author Carl Sagan claims that human society has reached a tipping point where we have to make a decision between the responsible use of technology and the extinction of human beings. He makes a very, very dire case. To support this claim about this very scary tipping point that human beings have come to, Sagan uses a combination of stories from history, predictions of the future, and scientific realities and debates in the present to show how important and how clear this decision that we have between survival and extinction has become. In order to make this real-world impact on his audiences, in order to get his audiences to think about the ways in which technology has both the power to make life on Earth better and to end life on Earth, Carl Sagan uses a very dramatic, very slowly paced video format. He's trying to make a real-world connection, have a real impact on his viewers. The way that Carl Sagan makes this connection is through a couple of different tools. He uses visual representations in the form of very cheesy 1980s special effects, which I love. He also uses humor. He uses examples from history. He uses lots of different modes of getting to the point so that no matter what his audience members think, feel, or believe, they can find a way to understand what he's saying. Another one of the important connections that I think Sagan makes with his audience is by making this argument hopeful. Oftentimes, these kinds of arguments can seem very dark, can seem very bleak, can make people feel very depressed. Sagan makes sure that not only does he provide hopeful and positive examples, he also provides a counter-narrative, a way of telling the story of humanity as a story of achievement rather than a story of danger. If I wanted to support those statements that I've made about Sagan's video, I would then need to find specific examples of where he does this. Several times throughout the video, Sagan either says himself or quotes someone else talking about the end of the world. The evidence in science, the evidence, data, and support he uses include a quotation from the Upanishads, which are a sacred text from the Hindu religion, as the opening of the episode. He includes video of the artificial video of the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed by an angry mob. All of these different pieces provide, again, evidence of the kinds of stark choices that he feels our civilization faces. We know the real-world impact that Sagan wants to have because there is a 20-minute interlude in the middle of the video where he expressly talks about the real-world reasons, the outside beginnings, the exigencies of why he made not just this episode, but the series Cosmos altogether. And finally, we can find lots of examples of Sagan's humor, his way of delivering ideas in a way which is easy to digest and understand, as well as the visual and audio connections that he makes with his viewers. By providing those specific examples, I've now backed up each one of my statements. In your homework, you'll be doing the same, writing a précis about the text that you're going to be using as the basis of your essay, and then finding specific examples of each one of these ideas to include as part of a beginning outline. If you have any questions, problems, or concerns over the weekend as you're working on this assignment, please email me as soon as possible.